What is up, guys? It is Barry Michael Doyle, and welcome to the second part of our React Native Redux tutorial, where we build this Capo Keys application from scratch to finish. Now, in this video, we are going to be building our application structure, and I'll also be showing you some GitHub checkpoints. Since this is quite a big project, you might get stuck along the way or want to just start halfway through or something. I'll show you how I've set up GitHub so that you can start halfway through if you ever get stuck, or if you just want to skip the start of this. So let's dive into creating our application structure first though. So here we are in Visual Studio, and the first thing we're going to need to do is really think about what our application is going to entail. Well, it's going to consist of components, and if you think about it, the different components we're going to have is this key area here, and then this capo area here with the buttons. So we have key buttons and capo buttons, and then also the result of this capo key over here, as well as this view transpose chords button. And we'll also have the ads in here, but we'll put those in later because that's quite a chunk of code to get through. So what I'd like to do is actually go into my application folder structure and add those components, just to say I'm getting there. So we'll add this folder called component, not components. It's actually supposed to be components because it's a plural. So we have that there. And in here, we'd want to stick in, well, we had the capo buttons component, and we're not going to put anything in it yet. We also had the, what else did we have in there? We had the capo key, that was what goes at the bottom, and we say .js to all of these. We also had the keys buttons, .js. And finally, another thing we had was the view chords button .js. Now I'm not actually going to build these components just yet. If we look back into our application, you'll notice that we also have this header component, but I'm not going to implement that as a component because that's actually going to fall under the React navigation module that we'll be using. So I'll look at that later. So that said, with React navigation, you work with different screens, and the screen will have the header component that we have over here. So let's add another folder in our root directory for screens. And we're only going to have one screen, but if you want to work on this application when it's done, you could add multiple screens. We will start off with the main screen, .js. So that's another component on its own actually, but we'll just put it in screens because it's its own massive container screen component. Another thing we need to implement is the Redux functionality of our application. So if we look back into our application, we have a whole bunch of things going on here. If I change the chord here, I can't click there, I actually have to hit the button on my phone. If I change these things, the application has to change. And we can't do all this stuff without having some massive application state, unless we want to work with a crazy amount of props going across different components, but that would be too much of a mission. So that's why I think this is a perfect tutorial to show you how to use React Native Redux. Mostly just React Redux, actually. So what Redux entails is it entails building a full application structure. And we do this by creating a store. So I'm going to create a store folder here, and in it, it's just going to have one file called index.js. So that would be the root file of the store folder, because you basically make it once and barely edit it. So in order to do stuff with the store, we also need to have reducers. Now I'm going to make my own folder for reducers, and you'll understand this as we get along with building this application, but just understand now that we're building the application structure so you can see the bigger picture of what we're trying to make here. So we're going to have a reducers folder, and in there you have the reducers.index, well, not reducers.index, just an index file, index.js in the reducers folder. We'll also have a whole bunch of other things. I'll add them as we create them, but the first one I want to put in is the keys reducer, because I want to know what keys there actually are in this full application. So we'll work on that later, but I just wanted to show you that we're going to have reducers. The store is going to use the reducers because the store contains the full application state, while the reducers, you don't want to record different kinds of data all in once. You'd rather split them up. So that's why we have multiple reducers. You can have just one, but it's nice to have multiple ones. Example, if we used authentication systems, it's nice to have a separate authentication reducer. Now, another thing we might have forgotten is in our application, we have this modal over here. So I need to click this on my phone, and it opens up this really cool modal. Now, that's another component that we're going to have to make. And instead of putting it into components, I'm going to put it into its own folder called modals, because it's quite a specific thing that we have here. Oh, that's not meant to go into the reducers. It's meant to go into the root folder. So I've moved it out. And this we're going to call the chords modal, because that's basically what it does. It shows you the chords. And now we have our good application structure up and running. Now, none of this stuff has code in, and if you run the project now, it will still work because we're running this app.js and it doesn't reference any of these things that we've created yet. So this is just a good start to get our application up and running, so we know a whole bunch of things that are going to be going into here. So we have our components, our modals. Don't look at the node modules. That's a lot of stuff that we don't need to look at. And we have our reducers, we have our screens, and we have the store. So that will cut it for this section of the video where we talk about the application structure. We'll see this working in place once we continue with the tutorial. Another thing I actually wanted to show you is the GitHub checkpoints that I've created. So let's head over to GitHub to show you what I'm talking about. So here we are at my GitHub page. This is github.com/BarryMichaelDoyle/Capo Keys. And I'll put the link to this in the description below, so don't stress too much about that. Basically, each time at the end of the video, I'm going to upload the current progress on our files into these different folders. So basically, from the last video, if we go into here, you'll see all the different stuff that we had implemented, except the missing Expo file and the node modules files. The reason I've left those out is because the Expo files get delivered to you, well, they get created once you have run through your project and built it and stuff. So you don't have to stress about that not being there. And the node modules, they're just a lot of things which you don't want to store in a GitHub repo. So in order to solve that, you'll need to actually go run npm install. And that should solve your problem. So once if you do decide to check out these checkpoints, you can go download the whole file from this main Capo Keys branch here. And it's still loading up. You can literally go download, and you can download the zip here, and you'll get all of these files. So then you just open the file example over here. I have this in GitHub Capo Keys #1. Like that should give you, so this will be your file, and you can head into 1 or 2, or there'll probably be like 16 or something by the end of this series. But at the time of recording this, I've only done 1 and 2. Let's say you wanted to get to the start of the third tutorial, then you want to check out the end of number 2, which is over here, which is the one we've just done. And this contains all our different components. We've put those components in there and stuff. And you can also see it in here to see what you're missing. So a good example would be if we were to go to the app.js over here, we could actually see the code that is written there. So even if you're a little bit stuck and you don't know what's going on, you don't have to go download the whole folder. You can just go check out the raw app.js file, which should show you everything you need to know. This is taking its time to load, so give me a second. And here we are. So this is our file here, and this is exactly the same as what we have in our Visual Studio Code over here. We have that over there. So this is just a great way for in case you get lost, or in case you just want to skip over a video and you're not really interested in a certain part of it, you can continue the video or the series later on by implementing it like that. So another thing, guys, let me head over to this GitHub page. Right, I'm back here. We'll head back to our Capo Keys, and just as I mentioned, this is up in the description below. And another thing I'd like to mention before we end this is if you are enjoying the series, please leave a like and subscribe. And one final thing is, if you're really enjoying it, make sure to share it with your friends, because that really helps me out a lot. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video.